Okay, in the second part of this lesson, we're going to look at the overall structure again and try to figure out why some of the things that we found make sense. So you may have noticed that the subtitle of the textbook we're using is Staking Your Claim, and you may have wondered what that comes from. In the old days, when there was a lot of land available and someone discovered something valuable, they would literally pound stakes into the corners of the area around that in order to stake their claim. And then they would go to the authorities and they would say, I found something valuable. And to do that, you had to prove that no one had discovered it first, that you have marked the boundaries of your claim, and that there's something valuable there. And the same thing is true in an article. In the introduction, that's where you show that no one has discovered this first. In the methods or the process, you mark the boundaries of your research. And then in the testing division, or the results and discussion, you prove the value of that discovery. So this is related to the third claim, again, in IMRD format, that you have a good explanation for your data. Now, the argument here, remember we're dealing with argument structure, the argument is split between the results, which cover the evidence, and the discussion, which talks about the reasoning. And therefore, in many papers now, you have a combined results and discussion because it's easier to write that as a complete argument with a separate conclusion. And so the importance of the components that we found there in IMRD is that, well, you have to have the data. That's the results. You also need the interpretation. That's the explanation of the data, which is found in the discussion. The comparisons are often statistical, showing that the data pattern makes sense or is real. And then the conclusion is sometimes just the last paragraph of the discussion. On the other hand, in the implicit claim 3 in IPTC, that your solution is better than existing solutions, you may have a complete argument in one paragraph with both the evidence, the data patterns, and the comparison, the reasoning, in the same paragraph. And again, why do we need all of these? Well, the comparison, particularly with previous solutions, that's the heart of your claim. And the interpretations may not be required, again, because it's based on a very solid theory. The testing methods and data patterns are what allow you to make that comparison. And then the conclusion summarizes the results. But here the focus shifts to the comparisons. So now we're going to make more tables. And you may ask, why so many tables? Well, in the last lesson, in lesson 9, we'll show you how to combine all of these as a guideline for writing your own article after you finish this course.
Hello, this is a result and discussion division component table of chemical engineering article. As you can see here below, there are more paragraphs in this division, but they have similar patterns, so I didn't list it in this table. And now we can see the component column here. As we can see that the comparisons and the interpretations are the two main components in this division. But why? It's because using numerous comparisons is really common in chemical engineering. By comparing to one another, the writer can emphasize how the methods reach the research goal. And having explanation of the comparison results is also necessary. So here comes the interpretations. So now we can notice that even in one sentence, they can have two components. It's because that the interpretations always follow by the comparisons. So now here comes the conclusion division component table. As we can see that there's only one paragraph in the conclusion division, but it's structured by 3 subcomponents. So the first subcomponents we can define it as the summary, because we can see that they use one sentence and the keyword is that we tackled. That means that they summarize the highlight of the articles. And the second subcomponents, we can define it as advantage because they use the keywords, the positive keywords of faster, low cost, and easily. And the third subcomponents, we can define it as future work because we can see that they say that can be improved further. So which means that there are much more things that they can do in this topic.
As shown here, this is a table summarizing the components marker for testing division showing this slide and the conclusion divisions showing the next slide. And right now, we want to show you the testing division first. This testing division, they are separated into two sets. The first set is belong to simulation part and the other belong to experimental result part. So let me look at the simulation first. In these ones, the first ones, they use the title simulation result as the testing method components. And we also have described that how they carry out the simulations. And the second ones, they compare the several figure. So this is like a comparison. So it shows out this is a comparison component. However, they also show the four figure here. They also represent the data patterns. And the third one here, this sentence is a bit complex. The first keyword is a cost 1.5 seconds less than. This is show the comparison between two results. So this one is represent the comparisons, and the other one is indicate that because of this behavior, and they try to show that what is happened in that result. So this represent the interpretations. Okay, let's look at the experimental results. As well, this one, the author tried to use the titles as the testing method. And for the figure 5b, they show the experimental setup for these experiments. They try to show you how they carry out the experiments. For the second ones, they use the figure 6 illustrate. This keyword is really important as the Gerry have shown you before. The keyword like the illustrate, demonstrate, show, represents, this kind of words, it shows that is the data pattern components. And the final one, the components marker is according to the experimental result. This one, they try to refer to the experimental result and then they try to explain what happened and what they means. So this is represent the interpretations. Right now, we will move to the conclusion divisions. In this part, we separate into three types. Okay, let me explain the first one. They say an innovation robust controller has been investigated for dealing with some things. This one, this paper is trying to propose and investigate this kind of controller. So this one is considered as a summary. So this type it shows the summary. So the second one, the components marker is several features that are worth pointing out. So this one is trying to show you the contributions of this paper, and this is the achievement type. And the final type is the future works, and it's really clear because the keyword is future work, so it's really obvious this is the future work type of conclusions.
Hi, this is a table summary about a component marker in electrical engineering article, and we are now talking about the testing division. As you can see in the table at the subsection 5C, we have 6 paragraphs and it will be include all the components, testing methods, data pattern, comparison, and interpretation. And sometimes we can find us one paragraph will be include 2 components. Is for example at the paragraph 3 in subsection 5.6, it will be include data pattern and comparisons. And this is the table summary about the testing division and also conclusion division. In the subsection 6D, it will be include 4 paragraphs and it will be have 3 components. It's testing methods, data pattern, and comparison. And in the conclusion division, it will be have 1 paragraph, but it will talk about the summary of their work and also their contribution.
So in this division, or these two divisions, we have a lot of components. Did that make it more difficult to find or less difficult? Or how did you feel about that in these divisions?
For me, actually it's really easy to read because sometimes even in only one passage or sometimes in one sentence, but it contains a lot of component there. But that is easy for us to read it in only one sentence, and we will not intention. So because sometimes I read a lot of paragraph and then they spread out the components. So sometimes it's really hard to connect between one paragraph and another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think for the case that we have many components in one paragraph or one sentence, it's better for reading.
Mm-hmm.
It's comfortable, more comfortable.
Right. Well, yours, you only had like 2 paragraphs, so
Yeah.
it was pretty easy to find. There's not much space to look for. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Wendy, how about?
and I also agree with Bong, because if they put the component together, then it's really easy for us to read. But for finding the components, it's hard, because if we read too fast, and we will miss it. And we could find every writer's habits if we read more articles, and then we can find the components more easily.
That's true. Yeah, because each writer has a different pattern. Like you found before in the need, it was however.
Yeah.
And some different words keep appearing in one article, but in a different article they may be different words. But after you've read 5 or 10 articles, you begin to see the same words reappearing. It's one of them that's there at least.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
What about
also
yours?
the same with Bong and Wendy. So 2 components can be one sentence.
Yeah.
Yes. And but in my case, easy to find. For example, they will mention directly, like they compare something. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the key words are much more common in this division, particularly, or these 2 divisions. So even though there are a lot of components, it's not that difficult to find.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, hopefully that will be helpful to our audience, and we'll see you next week. Okay, now it's your turn again to determine the components found in the last 2 divisions of your exemplar article. Again, as you do this, remember that we're trying to identify the main point of each paragraph, finding the component markers. But in this case, particularly in engineering, you may find several markers, 6, 7, 8, all in the same paragraph, followed by the same thing cyclically in the next paragraph. So make a table summarizing this information, and again, in the next lesson, then we'll go on to show how you support those claims, and then in the 9th lesson, how you can put all that together when writing your own paper.